Well, actually, I've changed the job a bit. I still work at Deltares, but now I'm a program manager. And we've been developing more concepts on flood resilient landscapes. And why? Maybe I should tell a bit more. Well, we just had this wonderful show of cities seeking to become resilient, more resilient, and I'm really very happy that with what you put down. At the same time, in the Netherlands, we live here in a delta, and we've arranged everything very neatly. But we are mainly focusing on protecting ourselves from water from the outside. That's our main goal. And then, okay, we also say we look into spatial resiliency, and we have our crisis management in order. But the main effort is on protecting ourselves from high water and waves. But if we have to face the climate change which Bart described this morning, how can we cope with that? So I started dreaming, and I know that everyone has their own dream. It's my own picture, my own drawing. So don't pull me down. But everybody has their own dreams about the future and how the future would look like if we are coping with that different amount of water. So that's me. I'm an old lady, and my son has grown up. He has a beard and a son. So what I dream of is a flood-resilient landscape in which we can live, work, earn our money, but also recreate and enjoy the water that is there in a safe way. And it's not easy. I mean, there's many others who also want something to happen, who want to transform. We have an energy transition to make. We want to increase biodiversity. We want to have a sustainable agriculture. So there's many people who want a piece of the cake. So there's many dreams, many possible futures as well. So let me tell me a bit about how I want to guide you through my speech. I will simply tell something about why. Why do we consider flood-resilient landscapes? What is it then? And how could we approach it? Well, obviously, I think I'm speaking now for people who are very much interested in resiliency, so I don't need to tell you much. There's climate change coming. We have also to deal with land subsidence. We also heard that this morning. And there's many spatial developments and transitions to make. Bart told us this morning about the IPCC report, and he didn't mention the latest advice of the KNMI. For our flood protection, we need to take into account a 1.2 meters sea level rise for our protection system. And when you look at the right-hand picture, it's the subsidence under different scenarios, but for 2050. And if you have a more careful look, well, maybe we will spread the PowerPoints later, but you will see that the sea level rise and subsidence can be in the same magnitude. So 1.2 meters up for sea level and a meter down for land subsidence in some areas of the Netherlands. So that's not a good perspective. And then about this changing circumstances and scarce space, I think there are people of Sweco, the consultancy firm, in the room. They've done this wonderful white paper about claims on space in the Netherlands for different functions. So many people need space to meet the ambitions and make these transitions. And if you add that up, it becomes a difficult task. And when you look at the suitability of our country to all these different functions, there's a white paper of Sweco and Deltares and Bos en Slabbers. They've looked into where will the country become more salty groundwater? Where do we have to deal with weak soils? Where will there be more water, and where will it become drier? And you can imagine that this is important if you want to do something for different functions. And I don't want to say that this is a suitability map. I don't want to say that. But if you want to have agriculture in the areas that become more dry, I think you have to think of your solutions, how to keep your water there. So it has implications. So what we thought is, I think this is already a year ago, so maybe you say, yeah, it's logical. But what we also think is the sea level rise and keeping in pace with sea level rise requires space for our protection system. If we want to raise a dike with a levee with 1 meter, you need to widen the base with 6 meters, something like that. So there's a lot of space involved because we have more than 3,000 kilometers of levees. So it can be that the cost of raising those levees and keeping up with sea level rise will become socially unacceptable. And that's a thing to think about, especially when you think that there are other claims for space. So I'm reaching the question, what are flood resilient landscapes in our perspective? They can have multiple forms. But what they all have to show is that from managing flood risk, they're moving towards a more resilient system. That's what we want to achieve. So what is a flood resilient landscape? It's a spatial solution, and it brings us manageable impacts of flood risk, and it combines environmental and spatial value creation. And it's very much aimed at the future. So there, some examples. I was in Hamburg in September, and there I saw a more urban area solution. An architect designed this solution. It's a very concrete solution for flood risk management, but it really has value because you don't see it now because it's nighttime. But the people of Hamburg told me that with nice weather, people are sitting there, they're having a beer and a wurst and having a nice lunch. They're enjoying the view, they're enjoying those ships. So there's a recreational value in this solution. And I also must say that my fellow hydraulic engineers said, this is costly. But it also brings benefits. So that's another way of thinking. The picture down there is a Dutch picture. It's in Dordrecht. You can also live in housing boats, but these are special. They're more like houses than boats. They're floating. This is Hong Kong, a sponge city. It is possible to do this, and we have just seen how Amsterdam is dealing with reclaiming the water, keeping it there where it falls, and using it. Now, then I'm reaching the question, so how can we make this transition? How can we work towards flood-resilient landscapes? And I found this quote of John F. Kennedy, who said, "Change is a law of life, and those who look only to the past or the present are certain to miss the future." And maybe that's a very essential thing in design. Design takes the change as granted. It's a sort of law. It is there. So if you want to design for a future society, you will have to take the change into account and not the status quo. And I think that's a bit of the thing which we see a lot occurring now. So a good practice in flood risk management is this picture. It's a scheme. It's published by the APFM of the World Met Organization. I want to focus on the top box because it says there, okay, so before you make your flood risk management plan, do think about your scoping. But what you usually see in World Bank assignments and also in the Netherlands is that a flood risk management problem is kept as a monofunctional issue. So the whole assignment and the terms of reference are all just focused on flood risk management instead of the integral picture. And so what I think could be a better practice is take a design approach, such as the vision in design approach by Matthijs van Dijk and Heckert, and think more future-oriented. And what they do is interesting because they look very specifically to this interaction level, which is really looking, so how does a future society look like, and which values are essential in that future society, and how, if that is the aim to go for, how can we, with small steps, work towards that value, and which products or which landscapes are suitable for that picture. Yes, what we of Deltares thought is, well, to make it more practical, we will work with building blocks, trying to to help people with parts and bits and pieces. And I don't think this is the final picture, but we've now just won a grant for a public-private partnership, and we will start developing this and start developing building blocks, which are quantifiable too, so that you can see what the benefits and the costs are, and trying to move towards a more flood-resilient landscape. I will move a bit quickly. And the whole idea about that is there's a top-down approach by developing the framework and testing that in real cases. So there's a couple of cases in the Netherlands assigned to it, where we will test whether the framework works and which building blocks are needed to come to integrated landscapes. So, in short, we are facing huge challenges and we require integrated solutions. We are quite convinced of that. And we think that it can help very much if you use design capacity to get and to work towards those flood-resilient landscapes. And we are very open to more wider cooperation. So if you're interested, do keep in touch. Do get to us, and we can discuss how to go further. This is.
Thank you, Annemargreet. Are there any questions? Yes.
Yes, thank you very much. What I see now with these building blocks is maybe quite alike with what was built for the Spatial of the Ruimte voor de Rivierprojecten. So the blokkendoos, known in Dutch. Now it's also there's the damage part, like the damage part of the risk. So very much appreciated. But will there be new tools used also, or existing tools? I mean, existing tools for water nuisance or damage, or for instance the waterschadeschatter or the victim and damage module, or will there be completely new modules for calculating the damages occurring maybe to floods or related problems related to floods?
Okay. It's a good question, and you looked carefully because I just showed building blocks that have an effect on flood risk, whereas we will also need other building blocks. For instance, if you want to make a combination of energy transition or renewable energy and flood risk, then you need a bit more than just the cost and benefits of flood risk. So we need to work that out and develop a wider approach. I'm sure of that, yeah.
Thank you very much. Yes.
This morning my student graduated at the TU Delft on the Spatial Adaptation Policy Pathway model. And it's a methodology I see much likeness in your proposition. And it would be interesting to combine those two, because she was, due to time restraints, limited on especially the urban area, block and neighborhood area, while you're scoping more towards a regional scale. And that gives me one question for you. How do you foresee governance changes to make this happen? Because there's an enormous challenge there.
You're right. What we'll first do in this PPP, the public-private partnership, is take all the evaluations of successful and less successful integrated solutions in, for instance, Room for the River projects, to see what we can learn and step on the shoulders of the ones that were before you. Governance really is an issue, although the Dutch flood risk policy should give room for spatial solutions. But what you see is that it's always, to make progress, it's narrowed down too much. So, and if you narrow down your scope too much, then you can't find integrated solutions anymore, and you can't grab those benefits. So it's a difficult thing. I think we'll have to investigate and see and talk to the ministry on how to do this better. On the other hand, there's also a new law, the Omgevingswet, the Environment Law, which might give some instruments that can be tuned and tweaked to more these integrated solutions. It's also the one, what is it? The één brievenbus, the one postbox thought. So maybe there's already some instruments ready, but they're not yet used so much. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Last question.
Another question. This was very much about the Netherlands, so a nationwide program. But water can also come in via the back door, for instance, from Germany, from the Rhine, around Doetinchem, for instance. But the dike does not stop at Delfzijl or at Katzand. Belgium and Germany also connected. How is Europe also taking to this approach? Are they also integrated in these building blocks?
They're interested, especially the BAW already said that they are thinking along the same lines. And I know that Environment Agency is struggling with how to bridge the silos or close the gap or whatever words they use. So there are several Western European countries that are struggling with the same issues, but there's not yet a project in that respect. So that could be a good idea to raise that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Annemargreet. Big applause. Thank you. Then